Hello everyone and welcome to the third MIST101 workshop, Introduction to Artificial Neural Network. I am Shubhra Bedi, academic mentor at UTMIST, and I would be conducting this third workshop. Before diving into the topic, let's have a quick recap of what was taught in the last workshop. The last session was basically about the different types of learning. So it started off with some goals of machine learning, some terms definitions, common types of machine learning problem, 3 types of learning, which was supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Lastly, it ended with the k-nearest neighbors algorithm. The workshop was mainly focused on supervised learning. So let me just give you a recap of what supervised learning is. Supervised learning is basically learning via some labeled photos or items that have been fed into the system. So if you look into the example here, you see that a cat's photo is sent as an input to the machine, and now the machine has to figure out what is the input so that it gives that type of an output. So once this photo is given to the machine, it immediately gets to know that it's a cat. Since it's a labeled photo, it has already been fed into the system before. So immediately it gives the output as cat. This is basically what supervised learning is. It's learning through labeled texts, photos, or something of that sort. It should be labeled. So let's dive into today's this workshop, which is artificial neural network. The outline for the workshop would be as follows. What is a neural network? Biological neural network, artificial neural network, activation functions, feed-forward neural network, and lastly, backpropagation. So let's start with what is a neural network. Recently, there has been a great buzz around the word neural network in the field of computer science, and it has attracted a great deal of attention from many people. But what is this all about? How do they work? And are these things really beneficial? So essentially, a neural network is a type of machine learning, in fact, a deep learning algorithm, which models itself after the human brain, that makes use of an algorithm which allows the computer to learn by incorporating new data. Neural nets are composed of layers of computational units called neurons, with connections in different layers. These networks transform data until they can produce an output. When a neural net is being trained, all of its weights and thresholds are initially set to random values. The training data is fed to the bottom layer, which is called the input layer. And it passes through the succeeding layers, getting multiplied and added together linearly, until it finally arrives radically transformed at the output layer. And this is done with the help of activation functions, which we will talk about in the next few slides. So basically, during training, the weights and thresholds are continually adjusted until training data with the same labels consistently yield similar outputs. So here we see this is the input layer. And this is the hidden layer where all the processing is done. And finally, the output layer gives us our required output. So I think it's too much of information given out to you. So let me start simple by answering a question. What is a neuron? Neuron is the building block of our brain. Neurons are the basic functional units of the nervous system, and they generate electrical signals called action potentials, which allow them to quickly transmit information over long distances. It takes an input and provides an output. Here we see these are the dendrites that takes in the input, similar to the input layer of the neural network we saw in the last slide. Then this is the axon or axon, which transports information through the hidden layer, which processes information and finally the output is let out to the dendrites of the nearby cells, which is a similar work process of the output layer of the neural network. So this entire concept is the biological neural network. And the neural network we saw previously was called the artificial neural network, and it is completely built upon the idea of the biological neural network. Let me make it more simpler for you and give it to you in a tabulation form. So soma, which is also called the cell body, relates to the node, as the node provides input signals similar to that of dendrites. The synapse in the cell body is able to increase or decrease the strength of the connection, and this is the similar role which is performed in ANN by altering the weights. The axon then sends the output signals to the other cells into their dendrites, which is again similar to the role of nodes that send out output signals. Therefore, neurons act as a basic unit in each of the above structures. However, there are significantly different ways of processing input. In the BNN, the input channel applies a non-linear function, whereas in ANN, we pass the input to an activation function to replicate a similar behavior. One drawback of ANN is that unlike human brains, ANNs need a lot of data, even for performing a very simple task. And it cannot perform different tasks simultaneously like the way a human brain does. And this is because human brain is more complex than an ANN. Let me explain this whole concept with some visuals. So basically an artificial neuron is a mathematical replication of a biological neuron. The neuron may receive one or more inputs depending on the type of network. These inputs are then multiplied by parameters called weights. And then these are fed to the transfer function to generate a single value, which is then sent to a non-linear function called the activation function that produces the output of the neuron. Now, what is an activation function? We would look at that in the upcoming video.